Inkcharm Project presents. A girl doesn't have the privilege of a childhood when she's cast into the streets of a busy city. Under the cliffs, high enough that the stench of the poor doesn't reach the noses of the Imperials in their stone castle. There is a ramshackle of lean-tos and shelters where the most unfortunate in the city lay their heads. Here is where Anita was forced to grow up quickly, a soft child in a burrow made of cold stone and rusted metal. The dank alleyways and squelching mud were an invitation to all manner of pests: rats, thieves, the occasional strangler. After heavy summer rains left standing water up to a young woman's ankles, Anita found herself fleeing through one of these alleyways. A group of men called after her, laughing, banging their fists and bottles against lean-to walls, causing a heavy echo to rumble against the cliff face. The thick mud didn't like to let go of her ankles, and Anita soon found herself surrounded. After they were satisfied, Anita's body lay still for so long that the stinking puddle she had been tossed in stopped rippling. She could see her broken face staring back in her reflection, crying for help. As if talking in its sleep, the reflection cried, "Help," in unison with her. Those eyes in the reflection flickered inquisitive recognition for just a moment. And for the first time in Anita's sour life, she prayed. She prayed as her body bled that she hadn't been born into this festering life. She prayed for soft clothes and a full belly. She prayed for the power to crush those wretched men under a finely crafted heel. And as she prayed, her wounds were suddenly displaced. She felt as cool as glass. She was given a second chance, a second life. She was going to live it to the fullest. With new, unfractured skin, Anita found the confidence to venture out of her familiar rat hole and into the more well-to-do markets near the Yanfu Palace. At first, she was shooed away from every stall, but the more she observed, the more she improved, adjusting her posture, looking down her nose at the wares, and blending in with the patrons who actually spend coin. Once she looked the part, a few messenger jobs here and there gave Anita a closer look at official papers. She refined an artistry in forgery, and her morals did not have to bend too much for this skill, as she mostly used it to forge papers for slaves. If there was one thing Anita detested most, it was slavers. No one should profit from the mistreatment of others.
My life has been nothing short of interesting, but my story began before I was born. Long ago, there lived twin trident women, as beautiful as a sunrise and as different from one another as fire and water. The only thing they seemed to agree on was the love of one man. A cruel trick he played on them, though, for neither sister knew of his relationship with the other. He tricked them into love, pregnancy, and then left before either of them gave birth. Whatever his fate is now, I don't give a damn. So that's how I came to be, as well as my sister, or she was born from my mother's twin, and though technically my sister, we didn't see eye to eye on anything. I suppose it's genetic. We grew up in a small fishing village. Our abilities as Tritons allowed us to breathe underwater and plunder sunken ships. Using our connection with the water, we could easily catch fish and swim effortlessly. But I felt like a big fish in a small pond. I hungered to discover more. I wanted to sail the sea, not just swim below the surface. I wanted a ship of my own to navigate the waters, and I would never let her sink beneath the waves as so many others I'd seen. Or felt much the same. It seemed, or at least she said she did. And we found ourselves a small vessel called the Trickster that needed a few more crew. I took the role of navigator. It was there that I met the most beautiful Klovic woman, Opalina. She had sun-tan skin with calloused hands, a long, thick black braid of hair, and golden eyes like shining coins. She was the ship's quartermaster, and she was as smart as she was beautiful. Over months and voyages, we grew closer. We strung our hammocks near one another, then opted to share one instead. She believed in me, in my ability as a Triton, that I could do so much more aboard a ship. These quiet conversations continued on during those nights aboard the Trickster. Even as the captain of the ship performed our marriage rites, she whispered that I could be captain, that I should have control of the ship. Then, one lucky day, we were caught in a great storm, and then the captain fell overboard. I saw my opportunity. It wasn't my fault that he drowned, but I didn't exactly dive in after him either. I told the crew that they were not lost without him, because I, the navigator, would lead them to victory. The crew roared in appreciation, and I assumed the captain position with no opposition. Opalina had a knack for the business side of things. I decided a course, and even Or had a part in all this, charting maps along the way. We continued along for a few months, this way, until my wife and I became hungry for more once again. We didn't want to wait for treasure to find its way to the bottom of the ocean. We wanted to take it for ourselves from aboard rival ships. The crew and my sister didn't take well to piracy, and I was soon mutinied. Opalina fit in very well aboard the Trickster, and she stayed behind to relay messages to me in secret. It took me a year, but I scraped up a new crew and a ship, and tracked the Trickster across the waters, vowing to get it back under my control. My new crew attacked the ship, as planned, but it went terribly wrong. My sister was never a good navigator, and she took the vessel too close to cliffs, and the rocks below carved out the belly of the ship. I saw the Trickster sink, with my wife still on it. I dove into the water looking for my wife, and I swam as fast as I could. There were no other bodies in the wreckage with her, just my lovely Opalina. I screamed in fury, came up to the surface, and saw my sister on the cliffs with the rest of the crew, unscathed. I screamed again, and they vanished right in front of me. I wanted revenge on my sister for this, for taking everything from me. My wife, my ship, hell, even my crew. Mostly, I just wanted my wife back. Following tales of the sea and seeking strange power from the depths, I thought I found the proper text. I believed. I was so sure in what I was doing. But I was wrong. I dragged Opalina's body from the shipwreck and pulled her to the cliffs above. Wind whipped and howled. The cliffs were sprayed with sea foam, and I drew a dagger across my palm while crying out ancient words. And something was watching me, and it granted my wish in the most twisted way. The corpse of my wife started moving, an empty husk, a mockery of our vows. I found my connection to the sea even greater, stronger than before. In my attempt to bring Opalina back to life, the hateful ocean took hold of what was left of her. I desperately needed to learn more about what I got myself into. And I posted a job on the bounty board, where my fate was crossed with Anita. I didn't really trust her at first, but her looks were decent, and her powers seemed stronger than she let on. On a later bounty board request, our paths crossed again.
When Anita grew tired of seeing the same faces day after day, she took to the bounty board. One such bounty caught her eye, and she took a ship to the northern coastline to assist an angry woman, Aura. It seemed all she wanted was information, but with her less than charming prompts, Aura was banished from the village, and Anita found herself having tea with the elder instead. The rest of Anita's evening, alone with the village elder Kanu, afforded her a long talk about their respective old friends, the ocean and the mirror, an opportunity the knowledge-hungry Aura missed. Anita wasn't put off from Aura's temper, though, and rather looked forward to seeing her again. It wasn't too long, actually, before they met again, this time back in Yanfu Palace. Anita was swiping from the coffers of the Meridian Kingdom faithful when Aura's voice rang through the courtyard. Intrigued, Anita ended up offering her assistance and knowledge, guiding the fleeing faithful through the city, through the muck in Squatter's Stack, and out the other side underneath the palace docks. By divine luck, Anita, Aura, a few other questers, and the faithful managed to take possession of a sailing ship, and Aura's mastery over water pushed the ship out of port. A handful of fire arrows flew out towards them, but luckily the ship didn't catch. The same could not be said of those remaining sailing ships back at the docks, since sparks from the wall of fire quickly ignited them, leaving only the massive steam hybrid ships to pursue. But they took too many men to crew and quite a while to start off. The party was safe, for now. The faithful were less than thankful. They wanted the ship for themselves, and didn't give any mind to the people who did the real work, getting the vessel out of danger. Anita and Aura shared in their ire, and fought the faithful tooth and nail, blow for blow, until it was just Anita left standing. Aura had fallen. Magical energy sparked across bloody floorboards. Thunder boomed overhead. In a moment of loss, panic, not wanting to be alone again, Anita wailed, rushing towards her friend's body, and dragged her over the slick deck to the ship's edge, to face the mirrored sea below them. Bring her back, she screamed, pleading with their reflections the way she did so many years ago.
I existed in a gap, a skip between where I fell and when I was at Anita's side once more, there by the water's edge. It was less than a heartbeat in time, but I saw myself, hollow-eyed and lifeless, hovering beneath the storming sky. I was a ripple. I was shattered glass. I was the hand holding me up and the face staring back. I was empty and alone, eager patience, and then I was me again.
The image of Aura in the water went still, and the corpse in Anita's arms lurched back away from the railing. It seemed Anita would be less alone than she thought. After a harrowing journey, they barely managed to pull the ship into port. West Einken wasn't the destination they had in mind, but it would have to do. Anita and Aura began searching for a crew, as well as someone who could disguise their ship. Already, there were people gathering around to look at it, remarking as often on its grandeur as they did on how beat up it was. It would only be a matter of time before someone realized this was an Imperial ship, and, in fact, someone in the crowd had taken notice. They spent a short while bargaining with out-of-work sailors and were then approached by a rather attractive individual named Z. With some negotiation, Z was able to introduce them to a ship's artisan, who undertook a fine enough operation disguising the ship, now dubbed the Reflection.
7th day of Spring Stag Moon. Signed on with a new ship, the Reflection. Hope it goes better than the last one, but I won't hold my breath. Don't know where they got this tub, but there's not a weapon on it. All right, crew by the looks of it. A little shifty, though. Joiner, go free. See Far, Wiss, Trisha, Cooper, Gershek, and Deej. Most are solid but unkempt, and worse yet, undisciplined. Be seeing a mutiny soon, I suspect. But the captains do seem competent. They seem to communicate a lot through long, meaningful glances. Guess that must mean they work well together. Not too sure about the Triton, Aura, but she's got spirit. Been revived recently, too. The other reminds me of her. Can't trust this Anita till I know more. Need to keep my weapon medallion handy, just in case I'm correct. The bandaged man, Gershuk. Fellow of the faith. A mysterious one, too. I wonder what he's hiding under all that gauze.
Between the crew and the remodeling, Anita's coin was spent. Moreover, Aura found herself in a growing debt to Anita. To expedite the repayment, they entered a tournament, for which the grand prize was 500 gold. Here, Anita, surprisingly, fought against Aura's own sister, then fell when facing a very muscled 10-year-old.
My fights could have gone better. I was left bloodied by the end of them, but there was another victory. I finally found my sister. That conniving sea scamp, right there in the tournament. She probably thought she could just slip away from me, but I didn't make it that easy. I found her, I grabbed her, and we talked. Then, like the backstabber she is, I was struck down before I'd even finished saying my piece.
Just when Anita thought her sailing partner was settling into a new lease on life, it was all for naught. She watched as Aura's body was recovered by the crew, dragged aboard, and laid out on the top deck. It was hard to pin down which feeling was beating out the rest. Rage, fear, grief, disbelief. This time, no reflection on the water could answer Anita's plea to give Aura back. When her eyes finally shut that night, it was far from restful. Or the snake slithered into Anita's dreams, inquiring after her dear sister, utterly oblivious to the fate that she had dealt Aura. Anita coiled around her and spat her own venom, twisting the dream into a trial, a poisoned nightmare. She declared Aura dead by Aura's own hand and dared her to face retribution. After waking, Aura frantically sought out the reflection, crying crocodile tears when she climbed aboard the ship. Gershek greeted her with the point to his blade, turning out to be a very valuable adversary. He was able to extort or pinch every last item of value off of Aura, and then get her to contact the tournament's pint-sized champion and beg for some of the winnings, that they might be able to revive Aura before it was too late. Trisha, Gershek, Reginald Farr, and the rest of the crew immediately set to work, scraping together any additional gold any way they could. They had to find a true cleric among the Meridian Kingdom's faithful and get it all done within a week's time. The pressure was on.
I could hardly believe my eyes when I came to. The last thing I remembered was the thunderous pain of my sister's spell. But now I was staring into painted stone walls, catching the soft glow of clustered candles. Trying to find my way out revealed less of a cavern and more of a maze, littered with statues to unknown gods and ancient heroes. Yet, I found salvation in the face of a beautiful woman, a mage with flowing red hair and vibrant shifting eyes. She managed to guide me out after I proved myself to hold no ill will and told me the truth of where we were. I can hardly expect anyone would believe my stories of these precious 7 days, but I swear that I have walked a frozen arm in the realm of Odyssey, guided by the tender hand of Levi's muse, Bowers herself. To think that the only thing she asked of me before I was called back to the mortal tracks of Reisende was that I don't forget her and send a message on magic winds.
When sweet life was breathed again into her form, Aura reprised her role as captain of the Reflection. But Anita wasn't sure how many more times she could bring Aura back from the dead. Logistically, emotionally, it was all taking a toll on her. Not to mention financially. Hoping to distance herself from the tragedy, Anita found their ship work for the West Einkin tribe mother by adding the Reflection to a wave of Einar vessels, spreading across the northern coast in an effort to combat frequent Corin state blockades. The Reflection was charged with repelling any state forces sailing to Isvolen, and Anita took on an additional task. In exchange for a ballista and bolts, the Reflection was going to take down a wyvern on the way.
25th day of spring stag moon. Been making way to Isvolen after that insipid arena fiasco, proving my competency all the while. That yawner whelp jumped ship in the middle of the night. I'd half a mind to drag him back and kill all his worthless carcass. I was right about Captain Nora. She's got little idea how to keep a ship under heel, but she is catching on quick, I'll give her that. I'll have to stay on till she's at least a little more skilled at keeping the crew in line. Is it right to leave her to the wolves? I was right about Captain Anita, too. Real business-focused. Not a slaver like the halfling. I'll need more info. But I'll be watching my back around her for now. At the very least, I don't have to worry about being in shackles again just yet. Pick up a bounty to squash a local pest on the way, and trade for a mounted ballista. It was a simple task, especially considering that I'm not the only one with magic about them on the crew. Both captains have some power under the surface. Odd power, too. Certainly not from any master or mistress in the Meridian Kingdom. Bringing the wyvern down was easy enough. Managed to help retrieve it, too. Methinks I've proven my worth properly now. Cleared its nest, even. Captain got a little pet out of it. A pseudo-dragon. Feisty little bastard. I like him.
Slaughtering the wyvern was only half the job. It had a nest for itself within the rocky inlet, and the crew had to be sure that the little lair was devoid of any successors to the wyvern's supply chain harassment, no matter how small. And there were such successors. Fiery, freshly hatched, though not precisely wyverns. Nevertheless, they were dispatched with no quarter. With the job done and the wyvern's cave clear, the crew began turning it upside down and inside out to glean anything and everything they could from the area. While rifling through the waylaid piles of skeletons, a diminutive sound reached Anita's ear. Something very small had taken refuge behind a large boulder in the cave, but what was it? With some quick thinking and a little jerky procured from her pack, Anita managed to lure out a tiny little pseudo-dragon from its hiding place. It quickly took to Anita and was brought aboard as a mascot of sorts, becoming a new and welcomed responsibility for Anita.
26th day of spring stag moon. My mistress has blessed me this day. We reached Isvolen, had a little time on shore to prepare for combat. Made a few suggestions. Captains actually listened. Perhaps I was wrong about Anita. Sailed out double quick. Got to patrolling the waters. Z spotted some trespassing keelboats on a small island, coincidentally the same one the wyvern was on. Perhaps we should have left it be for a day or two. They spotted us and started skittering off. We gave chase. Caught one rather easily. Coward surrender after a few threatening words. By Stelia's grace, the other was dashed upon the sea floor as the waters abandoned her for a time. We sailed out to the coward's bow and boarded them. We took their ship as ours after interrogating the crew, but they had little to share. Anita made them pay for it dearly. The keelboat was lashed to the reflection, and, as Stelia loosened her grip on the other ship, we again gave chase. We almost let the bastards go till a warship rounded the coast of an island. There was no doubt that it had been from where the keelboats were launched from. They attempted to retreat as well, but we didn't let them go so easily. On the approach, we sunk the keelboat and attempted to fire on the warship. However, the ship slowed to drifting and listed starboard. Come to find, the vessel was deserted. It was the work of a fellow cleric. I know it. The amulet of Tonha was enough proof that it was. I would have enjoyed a proper melee with such a fellow. Maybe he might have known a bit more where that old pretty boy got off to. Never did settle my grudge with that worthless bastard. No matter. I and a skeleton crew will be sleeping on our new prize to ensure that they don't come back. The reflection and crew will be returning to Isvelen to claim our reward. In the morning, we'll be setting a course for Yanfu Palace to put the warship to market. A shame. She's a good vessel. I think I'd like to see her flying a flag of my own making. But it's neither the time nor the place. Only when my mistress deems it fitting.
Anita summoned Trisha Koo to her quarters for another long, intimate conversation. Their exchanges always had a tendency to get quite heated when they were alone, but at the climax of that particular evening events, it was Trisha who managed to get in the last word, squealing not from her beak, but directly into her quartermaster's mind. Both women were astonished, and it would certainly warrant further investigation in the moons to come.
First day of spring's wolf moon. Whilst making way to Yanfu Palace, I decided to accompany Mr. Cooper to a birding college. Happened across a bounty for the very college we were headed to. Why not? Brewer there needed a lighthouse cleared so they could throw some sort of a bash. Not my digs, but coin is coin. Met a little friend there, too. A little kobold that thinks she's a dragon. Irony abounds, considering my own traveling companion. However, Ruby was quite the firebrand. Literally. Cooper and I decided to clear the lighthouse while Ruby made a distraction for the guard. With my mistress's will, I obscured the area, and Cooper tore the guards stationed there to shreds. Wives' tales or no, I'm starting to like him. With the party cleared to kick off, we got our coin, and a special reward to boot. Personalized drinks from the brewer. Gotta admit, I'm quite partial to mine. I'll have to head back at some time. After that, we milled about the party for a while. Ruby made a scene and got caught by the guard. But I got some information about what stones to turn over for a good carpenter for the ship.
Sailing down from Isvelen towards Yanfu Palace, Anita ordered the Reflection to weigh anchor so that she and Kabaan could find some time on shore to privately employ the sailing master's talents for a holy ritual, hoping to find more direction in her quest to understand the power that has continued to answer each time she calls. Unfortunately for the duo, they were interrupted by a bird large enough to obscure the sun. The feathered beast very nearly killed Kabaan. Thanks to the watchful eye and quick wit of Gershek, however, they avoided an early grave, sinking their assailant to the beachside with a few ballista bolts. The sailing master and quartermaster were finally able to begin a divine communion in earnest. As the ritual commenced, a storm began to brew. Lightning struck all around, until a singular rogue bolt cracked directly behind Kabaan. This was no mere streak of lightning. As Anita's eyes adjusted to the blinding light, she saw what looked like a doppelganger, or rather, a reflection of a self not yet attained. The questions followed after. Is there a true connoisseur of knowledge alive who would know the being that gives me my power? Asked Anita.
Yes,
said the divine emissary, speaking in a legion of different voices, all of which were in some way Anita's own. Is this person in the Huaren Empire? Asked she.
Yes,
it replied. Is this person in Xianren-Mengang?
No.
And so the ritual was finished, the questions asked and the answers given. There was one last message to be given by this servant of Stelia, but this message was for Kabaan himself.
Contact other plane.
With that, the being disappeared in a flash, as did the storm.
5th day of spring's wolf moon. Talked with Captain Anita. I think I was wrong, but I can't trust her fully yet. The halfling had a convincing story, too. My mistress had a message for me. Contact other plane. But who or what am I contacting, and why? I can't look into this now. Perhaps not for some months. With any luck, I might get to delve deeper into this mystery.
While sailing towards port in Yanfu Palace, I tried my hand at a spell, taking my words and sending them to my fallen wife. Though my connection with the sea may have been severed, I was still able to get a response. However, the voice calling back between my ears was not Opalina. It could not be her. If only I'd realized sooner, before I ran my mouth about where we were sailing. Before arriving at port, we were subject to a wicked stalker on the waves. A sunken ancient ship with the stalwart, staying its sides brought back to the surface by shadowy water and the wrath of the hateful ocean. Its decks crawled with rotting, skeletal, bloated, and spectral forms, all moved by a rage foreign to their own will. And I saw her. A siren made scream by the grasping deep lashed to the ship's prow as a gruesome figurehead moved and manipulated by tendrils of floating ocean ink. That was what answered me before. Opalina. We prepared to fight, landing arrows and bows in what appeared to be the captain of this roving vessel. Though wounded, he did not fall. We stormed our decks and cut down his crew, seizing the man just as the stalwart began to sink, pulling Opalina's corpse back to its oceanic locker, out of reach.
The Reflection's newest prisoner had many things to say.
Whoever brought the ocean's ire upon them should know. Until the link is severed, you'll never be free. I'm proof enough that there's no rest in a watery grave. When I was young, I was passionate. I was a leader. I found victory. I flexed my might, and soon was made a captain, then an admiral. I swore an oath to lead, taking charge of the first Einar fleet in memory. I swore that I would prove my worth for this through action, that the challenge was merely a test I would overcome, that I would hone my body and discipline my soul to ensure that the tribe mothers and clan fathers of my people would be able to see their young men and women return from our maiden voyage proud and triumphant. And I ignored the sailors. I ignored the warnings. I ignored the black water, singing of victory on our journeys before it even passed our first sunrise. I doubt that any of my fellow sailors still have memories to hold on to. or minds left to comprehend them. Trapped in the sunless depths, I thought that I would soon join them. Sodden bones, mindless skull, soulless husk. But then there came a siren, and through her the ocean was given a voice. Even its whispers seemed enough to break waves and minds alike. And hearing it, I was made not a husk, but a slave. I know that I am a part of the ocean, sailors. I know my brethren are too. I know that until I find a way to silence the ocean's lips, I will never be free. And to whoever gave the water its mouthpiece, neither will you.
He cast a hollow eye toward Aura.
Without help, I'll just fall victim to the hateful ocean once more. Neither I nor my sailors will find rest. I admit that I may not be the safest person to have around, but I could be a porthole into the biggest threat tracking you at sea. Let me on your crew, at least until the ocean's lips are sealed, and I promise to fight with everything I have. My name is Dulbeer, former captain of the Stalwart.
8th day of spring's wolf moon. Amital, pursued by abominations, an affront to nature, sitting comfortably in our hold. I should have known Aura was hiding something, but this? Her dead wife, a puppet of old sailors' superstition. I won't back down. I won't run. This isn't just another job now. My mistress led me here to aid them, and I will not disobey, just as she led me out of the halfling's chains, just as she led me to my last crewmates and into the serpent's waiting arms. The undead desecrating the hold might be of use to us, but once it's outlived its worth, I will cleanse this place of its filth, whether it's succeeded in its mission or not. This is my ship, too, just as much as the rest of the crew. These are my crewmates, and those are my captains. I will not abandon them amidst their hours of need. I must light some incense. I can smell the rot from here.
I saw her face, bloated with salt water, puppet to the ocean as it held her above the waves. It wasn't her voice that answered me. I am a widow now. I have been for many moons. Maybe it's time to make good on my promise with Bowers.
The ship made port in Yanfu Palace. Anita waved goodbye as Aura, Kabaan, and Whis sought out the Temple District Library. Aura looking for information on some fabled muse of Li Bai named Bowers. Meanwhile, Gershek guided Anita deeper into the dockyards to find a buyer for the captured ships. Anita soon became acquainted with an Omiri ambassador from Fort Renoma. Though in need of a ship, the ambassador was a seasoned negotiator, haggling extensively before Anita found a sweet spot they could both agree on. They concluded their business with a proposal of dinner together. Although the dinner date went well, it was soon interrupted by Kabaan. He had got himself into a rather difficult situation with the guards, no doubt earning him some infamy in the Hua imperial capital. Thinking quickly, Anita took Kabaan's loot and disguised the little lizard as an aged woman. Not her best work, no, but it was at least convincing at a glance. With the unwelcome interruption concluded, Anita continued her date by perusing the shops of Merchant Line, hoping that her companion's added eyes would be able to spy a pair of long sought-after blue boots. Before this could bear any fruit, Anita's gaze was drawn towards the cliffside, where thunder and lightning boomed around a squat figure surrounded by guards. Kabaan's disguise lasted for a short time, but one slip-up, and the sailing master found himself in a scuffle. Anita knew the lizard was likely outclassed, so she surrendered to fate, wished the ambassador well, and took off to rescue her ally above.
9th day of spring's wolf moon. Finally weighed anchor in Yanfu. Quartermaster Anita had some business to attend to, and she wasted no time in getting to it. While I was assigned to assist in the research effort over this new enemy of ours, and other things I will not commit to writing. Aura has been silent since the encounter. More short-tempered, too. I must speak with her later. We broke into groups. I took Whis with me to the Temple District. Found the place in the midst of a blasphemous silencing. Of the heretics confiscating books as though they were weapons. Found what we could. Then Whis had one of the guards took a particular book of interest. I confronted the man and his compatriots, and I let them live long enough to regret being born. I took a whole sack of books from the bastards. Don't yet know what's in them. I made my run for the slums, met Captain Anita along the way, and gave her as many of the books as possible. She had me dressed in a rather uncomfortable disguise, but although it was rather demeaning, it got me far enough. Finally got back to the ship after putting down a few more blasphemers with her help. The captains and I need to have a talk. Start planning out where we go from here. I need to ensure that Aura and that freak below deck aren't being tracked somehow. Then I need to look into blessing the ship for all our sakes.